Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 127 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about whether selling covered calls is a good strategy, or does MicroStrategy invalidate selling covered calls? And before I get into that, I just want to say that the best part about selling covered calls is never having to admit you're wrong, because you can just keep rolling until you're right. And I'm only kind of half kidding about that. But and actually, Tasty Trade did a research on that one, and in a bull market, they said, okay, what if you just keep rolling and rolling forever? And I think it ended up being not good. So, like, if the SPY is just creeping up in a bull market over a year and a half or a couple of years or whatever, and you're just selling covered calls against it, and your strikes are just getting breached week after week and day after day, and you're constantly having to just roll and roll and roll and roll until you finally win, I don't think that was actually as good as buy and hold. But it does bring up a good question. So, and this goes for any subject whatsoever. If you consider yourself an open-minded person, the litmus test for whether you are truly open-minded or not is you have to be willing to answer the question, what are my falsification criteria? So what would have to be true in order to get me to change my position about what I think, about what I believe? If you cannot answer that question, then you are not open-minded. You are not willing to hear anything that would invalidate your belief. And I understand that there are people of faith or whatever that must do that as a matter of course, and that's fine if you're just willing to accept that that's not an open-minded belief. But some people like to think, oh, I'm a true believer, but I'm also open-minded. And those two things generally do not mix. And being a true believer probably has its place as well, because they might be a little bit harder to defeat in battle if you've got a bunch of rabid true believers on one side, and they just can't be dissuaded. There's nothing that you can do to just stop them and discourage them from attacking. True believers can get you can go a long way. But let's just say open-minded. Being open-minded is something that you value. You have to say, okay, I believe A, and if B, C, and D are true, then I will say, oh yeah, okay, you got me. I no longer believe in A. So that was way longer than I needed to take to discuss whether limiting my upside at all is reasonable, but especially whether it's reasonable or rational trading MicroStrategy. And so my falsification criteria would be two things. If my account stops going up over a reasonably long period of time, so if we're in a bull market and everybody else's portfolio is going up and mine isn't, okay, that's one. Two would be if we're in a bear market and my account's going down faster than everyone else's, okay, that would do it as well. And then the other one would be if the strategy, it no longer affords me the ability to generate premium, which I can then use to buy more valuable assets that allow me to sell even more premium. So I've mentioned it a couple times, and the purpose of this strategy is not necessarily to compete with buy and hold. Buy and hold might be better in certain scenarios, and selling covered calls might be better than buy and hold in certain scenarios. But for me, selling covered calls is about reaching critical mass. And what I mean by that is when you only have, let's say you only have 100 shares of Riot. That's it. You scrimped and you saved, and you came up with 100 shares of Riot. You paid $1,000, and now what? You could just sit on it, and if you're never able to save another penny in your life, then you are a slave to the price of Riot. When Riot goes up to 20, then you doubled your money, and when the Riot comes back down to 10, you're dead even again. And then when it goes up to 17, 18, you're rich again, and then you're poor again. And you are just a passenger on the roller coaster. However, and this is going to give me an extra day of premium until next week, but the principle is going to be the same. If I go out here to the 11.5 strike, sell this covered call, probably have to go to the, maybe sell it for 11 or 12 to get this to fill, whatever. Might get fill at 13. I'm limiting my upside to 11.50. I'm paid $12, $13, and now I go out and buy another share of Riot. Now, instead of owning 100 shares forever, now I own 101 shares forever. Well, if you're lucky. If they get called away, then you don't. But if they got called away at 11.5, then I made $150 profit, which is 15% in a week. Plus, I still have the one share left over. So I'd make 15% in 1 week, and I'd have an extra share just hanging out if these got called away. But that's just getting, 1% richer a week. And the returns on that are pretty decent. That's 52% a year, 1% a week. So what I mean by reaching critical mass would be if you continued to do that, or maybe you just had enough, but if you had 10,000 shares of Riot and you sell 100 covered calls at the 11 strike, now you're getting paid $13 times 100, and you can take that $1,300 and now you can buy another 100 shares of Riot. You're not just getting one share, you're getting 100 shares of Riot. And now you're not limited to just selling 100 covered calls that week. Now you can sell 101 covered calls. And then next week you'll be able to sell 102 covered calls, and then 103, and then 104, and 105. That's what I mean by reaching critical mass. And that's the point of this strategy. So to an extent, I don't need MicroStrategy. So when people say, oh, you're limiting your upside in MicroStrategy, I've been doing this for quite a long time with hundreds of different stocks, way before MicroStrategy came along. Now, before the irresponsibly long MicroStrategy folks come from my head, I do believe that it's the most valuable stock in the stock market and probably in the history of the stock market, but I don't need it to execute my strategy. Now, I'm going to sell covered calls in it, and I'm going to use the premium to buy more shares of MicroStrategy or leaps in MicroStrategy or another 100 shares of Riot or 50 shares of Mara or whatever the price is, and I'm going to continue to stack. So I'm limiting my upside, so I'm technically somewhat short for 1 week to week, but I'm using the short to get longer. And this is what it looks like. I made a nice little spreadsheet. So when you're dead ass broke and you scrape together enough for 100 shares of something and you sell a covered call and you buy an extra share, now you've got 101 shares and it's going to take you 100 weeks of buying one more share a week to get to 200 shares, right? Let me make this a little bigger. Then you got 200 shares. It took you 2 years to get it, but you've earned it. And this is not putting a single dime out of your paycheck into this. This is just buying 100 shares, and it doesn't matter if the shares cost $10 a share or $1,500 a share like MicroStrategy. The ratio is going to be the same because you're collecting a percent. Now, if you collect 2%, you can buy 2 shares. If you collect 3%, you can get 3 shares. Something insane over here, if you got 5%, generally things that can get you 5% a week are so volatile, but you can slide your strikes down and go closer to the money. You could probably get this. You could definitely get it in MicroStrategy and some other stocks. Some of the mining stocks, you can get that. But in that case, it's only going to take you 20 weeks to get to another 100. But, I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. So let's just talk about getting one a week. So then it's going to take you 50 weeks buying two a week to get to your third 100 shares. And it's only going to take you 34 weeks buying 3 a week to get to 400. And then it's going to take you 25 weeks to buying 4 a week to get to 500. I think you get the point. So this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, all right? Scrolling way the hell to the bottom of the spreadsheet. After 573 weeks, you would reach critical mass. You'd have 10,000 shares, and that's 11 freaking years. But keep in mind, this is not putting in even one single dollar. Now, the other thing is, and you can look at this positively or negatively, but this is even if the price of Riot stayed $10 a share. This could, this would happen. Now, if you sold the 11.5 strike and it goes to 12, well, then you're going to have to come up with $50. And if you've got, 5 extra shares, then you could sell each one of those for $50, for $10 a pop. So then if you were up here and you had 10 shares and you had to sell 5 of them, okay, well, that knocked you back down here. But that's not the end of the world because you still have 100 shares that are now worth 11.5 or 12, excuse me. They're worth 12, and you're not getting paid $10 a week selling your covered call. You're getting paid $12 a week, and you're still able to go right back to buying another share. So, if something breaches your strikes and you got to sell some of your assets, it just knocks you back here. But your overall account value is still grown like 15%. And so, like I said, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, but once you get here, as long as your stock doesn't go to zero, it doesn't matter what you own. And you don't have to have 10,000 shares of whatever you're trading. Like if you own MicroStrategy and you're getting 1% a week, that's $1,500 a week. So you can get, if you have 100 shares of MicroStrategy and you get paid $1,500 this week for selling a covered call, you can buy, 150 shares. Is that right? 150 shares of Riot. And then you can turn around and sell another covered call in Riot. And then the other thing that I'll say is, okay, I've got these 1370, 1380, 1400 strikes. I'm a little pissed at myself for being a little bit greedy with this premium because I didn't even really collect 1%. I think the only one I got 1% on was this 1370, and I took a little less than 1% here. And I just kind of felt like there was a rally. The premium in MicroStrategy had been kind of calming down. So when premium is not as good, the focus should be on the value of the stock. But I got a little bit greedy here. But even so, my portfolio is up 30% this week. So I can't complain that it's not up 40%. Like 30% is good. I'm good with 30%. And the other guy, I'm not mad at him, right? He took this trade. He YOLO'd. He bought this, he bought this 1400 strike call. He shelled out $900, and now he's getting it's going to be worth like 5,000, a little bit more than 5,000. So he's getting like a 5x. Good for him. And that's one reason why I love covered calls as well. To me, it's one of the most ethical trades in the stock market, because usually you have a winner and you have a loser. But with a covered call, if this stayed under my strike, if this breaches my strike like it did, I mean, I still got paid $900, and the value of my stock went up from like 11 something. Let's just say 1,200 because the math's easy. So that's $200 a share. That's 20 grand right here. So my account went up 20 grand before it started losing money at 1,400. So it went up 20 grand. Plus I got paid 900, which is, seems like nothing compared to the 20 grand. But my account is up 20 grand this week based on this 100 shares of MicroStrategy. Now it could be up another, 5 grand. But, what's the big whoop? I mean, I did get my face ripped off when this went to 2 grand. I think I had the 1,400 strike and it went to 1,700, 1,750. And, I had to cough up like 35,000 in 1 week. But, my account was still up 20. So when it went from, if I had the 1,100, 1,200 strike, the 1,400 strike, and it was probably 11 or 12. Actually, it was a very similar situation right here. And anything can happen tomorrow. Maybe it'll rip to 1750 tomorrow, and the same thing will happen. Whatever. I'll be even cheering even louder for this guy. Buying a $900 call and it going to fucking 35,000. That's nice. Good on you, mate. But usually I take these guys' lunch money. Most calls that people buy, especially these short-term, 1 week away calls, they generally become worthless. So I just take their money every week, and then I buy stuff with it. And so these out of the money leaps that I bought actually worked out pretty well this week. It was a little bit double yesterday when it was closer to 1550. And maybe I should have paid a little bit of attention and sold it, but I kind of have a decision to make whether I want to sell one of these for profit. My buying power is pretty legit, but after I spend 15, 20 grand to close these, I'll probably be able to roll them for no debit around the 1450, 1470 strikes. So if I do want to roll these and pay nothing, I can roll them to around 1470. But that's not baking in my 20% call away. I'd have to go 280. So I have to go to the 1700 strike, and I would definitely have to pay debits. So I can go ahead and sell these and fund that difference, or I can, but then I won't have enough of these to ensure the stock ripping to 2K again. And I think there was some index fund inclusion that may have fueled some of this. Not really sure exactly. But this is just business as usual. So my account's going up. It didn't go up as much as it could have. That's fine. And I will also have some money in my pocket because I booked some of these profits if the price goes back to 1,200. Now maybe that's heresy, because when Bitcoin and MicroStrategy are pumping, Bitcoin's always going to 100, it's always going to 1,000,000. And then folks get down in the dumps when things are just languishing and trading sideways and up, down, and consolidating and all of that business. But yeah, I don't think this invalidates my strategy. Like I said, if folks in the SPY start making more money than me, that will invalidate my strategy. If I get to a situation where I'm no longer able to sell enough premium to buy more assets, that would invalidate my strategy. So I've heard a lot of the criticisms of selling covered calls. You're limiting your upside, picking up pennies in front of a steamroller, et cetera, et cetera. But like I said, if I got priced out of MicroStrategy, I would still just keep buying MicroStrategy. Like if I had to go over here and buy like 20,000 shares of Mara and another 20,000 shares of Riot, and that was all, because I couldn't afford 100 shares of MicroStrategy because it just went to 10K overnight or something ridiculous. I'm still implementing my strategy. I still have critical mass, and I'm still getting exponential returns. And the money that I collect from selling covered calls in Mara, I can just start stacking shares of MicroStrategy again. And then maybe I claw my way back, and 2 years from now, I got another 100 shares of MicroStrategy when it's traded for 10K. It's really totally fine. And I love MicroStrategy, but I don't need it. And, even if I do let one of these get assigned tomorrow, and I get paid my $13.70 a share, I'll have a shitload of bankroll buying power. Maybe I'll replenish my gas tank with Tesla, who I also love. They're probably not feeling the love because I'm turning an eye towards MicroStrategy lately. I'm reminded of that meme where the guy's with his girlfriend and the hot chick walks by and he turns and looks, and then the girlfriend's looking at him. I kind of feel like that's Tesla looking at me like, why are you staring at MicroStrategy's ass? But MicroStrategy does have a fine ass. So I love MicroStrategy, but I don't need it. I want it, but I don't need it. The strategy does fine without it. And I will probably hold MicroStrategy for at least the next year and a half. To me, it's a vehicle to buy more Bitcoin. So I know some folks consider it like a generational transfer. I don't. If Michael Saylor gets the cure for death or something, and he's just going to live forever and be the CEO forever, that's fine. MicroStrategy's now generational, passed down to my kids or whatever. But to me, that's still, Bitcoin is the only asset I truly need. All of these other assets are just fun to play with. And I think that's a good place to leave it. All right, be good, y'all.